Welcome to Amidst the Chaos, the podcast where we dare to find God in the middle of real life, not just the highlight reel. I'm your host, Amber Gallion, and around here we build on one foundation only, Jesus. In each episode, I'll share my journey with God, wins, wounds, questions and all, and how He brings order, clarity, and peace into the chaos of everyday life. So take a breath, bring whatever you're carrying today, and let's lean into the one who never changes, even when everything else does. Hey friend, welcome back to Amidst the Chaos. I'm Amber, and as promised, today we're going to dive into the workshops I attended at an event called Out of the Shadows that I mentioned in the last episode. This is a story about how God used a very literal obstacle course and one very timely Bible verse to show me that I could trust Him more than I trusted my own limitations. You know, it's funny how we can walk into something thinking we know exactly why we're there. Like me going to Out of the Shadows because I wanted to be baptized and knew it would be available. And then God ends up using the parts we least expect to speak the loudest. When I walked into the first workshop called Overcome Your Obstacles and saw it was literally an obstacle course, my first thought was, oh no, this is a waste of my time. I can't do this. I actually considered just sitting it out entirely. Because back in March, I'd broken my fibula, and that injury had left me with a pretty sensitive ankle. And it brought back memories of when I was 14 and I'd torn a ligament by twisting my ankle on a trampoline. That old fear came rushing back, the fear of getting hurt again, of my ankle just not being strong enough. I thought, if I try this, I'll just twist my ankle again. And I'm not ready for that. So I went up to the leader and said, look, I really just can't do this. My ankle's still weak and I don't want to injure myself. She was super understanding and said, we'll figure something out. But first, she said, let's read Psalm 18 together as a group. So we all sat down and read it. And one verse jumped out at me like it had flashing lights around it. Psalm 18, verse 37, which in the New King James Version says, I have pursued my enemies and overtaken them. Neither did I turn back again till they were destroyed. But in the Dutch translation that was used, there was this line, and I've translated literally to English for you. You have made room for my footsteps under me, and my ankles have not moved. I just sat there, staring at that verse. It was like God was saying directly to me, hey, I've got your feet. I'm making sure you won't slip. It was so clear and so personal that I knew I had to do the obstacle course after all. After we finished, they asked if anyone had something to share. And I told them a story I'd heard from Pastor J. John. He once said that someone told him, Christianity is just a crutch to lean on. And he replied, yes. And if you break your leg, you need a crutch to walk. If you're spiritually broken, you need something to lean on too. In that moment, I realized I was invited to lean on Jesus as my crutch even more, and that He had made my path wide enough and my ankles strong enough to walk over obstacles I'd never thought I'd get past. So I did it. I stepped out in faith and actually went through the obstacle course. And guess what? My ankle didn't give out. It didn't collapse. I made it through the entire course. And it was like a physical picture of what God was doing in me emotionally and spiritually. I realized that sometimes God gives you a promise not just to comfort you, but to push you to do something you thought you couldn't do. Reflecting on what it means for all of us, this isn't just about my story. It's a reminder that sometimes God uses these unexpected nudges, like a random workshop or a single verse of scripture, to show us that we're not meant to rely solely on our own strength. He invites us to see that He's got our back, even when we think we're standing on shaky ground. So if you're facing something that feels like an impossible obstacle, maybe God has a word or a promise just for you. And that's really the heart of what I wanted to share today. is not just about overcoming a physical obstacle. It's about realizing that sometimes our limitations are the very places where God is waiting to show us His strength. Or as I like to say it, inviting God in to flex His muscles through me to show His strength to others. So let's dive into the second workshop, which was called Let Your Victory Ring. Honestly, by the time I walked into that second session, I felt like something had already been broken open inside me. I was more receptive, more curious, and I just thought, okay, God, I see you're doing things I didn't expect. Let's see what's next. In that second workshop, we were invited to sing out loud and just let our voices ring. People shared testimonies of how God had moved in their lives, and I realized how powerful it is to hear those stories. Even though I didn't share my own testimony there, listening to others made me see how important it is to let your victory be heard. It reminded me of that verse, "We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony." I felt a seed planted in me that my story also needed to be shared, that there are people who will see themselves in my journey. And looking back, I can see how God orchestrated this whole sequence. Coming out of the shadows, overcoming obstacles, and then letting my victory ring. It's like He was guiding me step by step. First to face my fears, then to trust Him, and now to share that trust openly. In that sense, doing this podcast is letting my victory be heard. It's me stepping out of the shadows of fear and letting God show His strength through me. Whether it's by sharing my testimony here or literally singing on stage at church with the worship team. And now, I feel like God is asking me to build a platform where that victory can ring out in different ways. I can't wait to see how He's going to flex His muscles through me so clearly that everyone can see it's Him, not just me. So before we wrap up, I'd love to leave you with a few more questions you can take into your own time with God. First, ask yourself, Lord, is there an area in my life where you're inviting me not just to overcome a fear, but to actually let my victory be heard? And then ask Him, what testimony have you given me that could encourage someone else if I shared it out loud? And lastly, how can I trust you, God, to turn my obstacles into opportunities to show your strength? Maybe even in ways that involve me stepping onto a platform or lifting my voice. Take these questions into your quiet time and let God speak. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from simply asking, listening, and then being bold enough to let your victory ring out. If this episode spoke to you, remember, God isn't looking for perfection. He's moved by your trust and your willingness to share what He's done. So if you've been holding back from letting your testimony be heard, maybe this is your invitation to step out and let your victory ring. And if you know someone else who needs that nudge, share this episode with them. All right, we'll leave it here for today. Thanks for listening to Amidst the Chaos. I'm your host, Amber Gallion, and my prayer is that today's episode helped you see Jesus a little more clearly right in the middle of your own mess and motion. If this encouraged you, share it with someone who might need the reminder that God is building order, even when life feels anything but stable. Until next time, keep walking, keep wrestling, and keep building on the only foundation that won't move, Jesus.